So I'd like to welcome Emma Lazenby, who's an animator and director and designer, who won a BAFTA Film Award for her short film Mother of Many in 2010. So welcome, thanks for coming.
Hello.
Hello. So should we just start with your early career beginnings, and we can jump into kind of how you got in, like, did you always want to work in the film industry?
I liked drawing a lot when I was young, and so I went to college and I did illustration, and I wanted to be an illustrator. And then I went to a university that did animation and illustration, so I could try animation. I made a film at university about my grandma who had Alzheimer's. I found a job. I applied to anywhere that looked like the right kind of place for me, and I decided I didn't want to be in the city. And I got a job in a Gaelic speaking animation company that made kind of Scottish myths and legends. I did animation, I did model making, I did everything, and I did storyboards, and I was there for 3.5 years, so it's a really good place to start. I learned such a lot. After that, I moved to London. I was a freelance animator.
Okay.
I think the turning point for my career is probably not turning point. I think everything's important in your career. But I worked on Charlie and Lola on the first 2 series as a designer, and before that I'd always been an animator. So it was where I started to take myself more seriously, I suppose, and stop just making things move. I started to make what things looked like.
Yeah. So how would you describe your role on Charlie and Lola, like as a designer? What were the differences between being just an animator to being a designer? It's
in a kind of an old-fashioned way of working. It's using this program called Cell Action, which is what they use for Peppa Pig and Charlie and Lola, and a lot of children's animation is made on Cell Action. It's a good program, but you make a cutout model just like old-fashioned cutout models that are made out of card. Right. You make them in the computer, so you have alternate hands and every joint has got a bend in it. Right. And then the designer builds this and builds the backgrounds and builds the whole episode and puts it into scenes and files and puts all the characters in the right place.
So how would you best describe the role of a director in an animation project?
I come up with the idea, I find how to make it, like the funding often, and I design it, but I sometimes get a team of designers to do key designs. And then usually now I don't animate, but I direct the animators. So right. I direct an editor and a script editor, so I'll write a script and then I get the script editor to make it better and we pass it between us. Yeah. But the most important stage for me is the animatic, which is the storyboard kind of timed out with temporary music and temporary narration, which I'll do. It describes the whole film. And anybody who watches it, if they understand what an animatic is, they can see what you're doing.
So Tom Dexter wanted to know, when creating animation, what's your opinion on the balance between narration and visual imagery?
I think animation and film is like a big puzzle. So narration is really important, and story is really important, and visual is really important. It's all like a big puzzle, and you can't say one thing's more important than the other. Yeah. Probably depends on the film. I think if you can make a film without any narration or speech, it's a really good thing because you're telling the story, and there's this thing, show don't tell. So if you're telling somebody, if a character says what they're feeling, you should be able to tell what the character's feeling without the character saying, oh, I feel really sad. Yeah. It should be the animation that brings that through, definitely.
And what do you think the benefits are of telling stories through animation as opposed to live action?
For me, because I'm really interested in education and giving information across, because I make medical films now and it's what I'm the most interested in. I know that animation is a lot more powerful to kind of educate and to be able to, without scaring somebody, be able to tell them anything about the inside of your body or about cancer or about anything. It's a using real voice and animation together, you can look into something really properly and you can keep it to a short length, which live action will get really long if you're filming somebody talking and talking and talking.
What kind of technical knowledge do you feel is like required to do your job?
It completely depends on what kind of animation you want to do. I have always been a flash animator, so what I've always needed to know is to use Flash really well and to just really know the program completely. To use After Effects, because I never just use Flash, I always layer things up in After Effects. To use Photoshop, sometimes even drawn animation, hand-drawn animation, or painting on glass, or it just involves whatever I need to get that effect.
Kirsty Dexter wanted to know, what are the best techniques to get the most realistic facial expressions and body movements in animation?
For facial expressions, it is just how much of a good animator you are more than what program you use. As long as you've got eyebrows for facial expressions, and with speech, that you remember to put in the O's and the P's and the V's, and there's certain mouth shapes that make it look like somebody's talking. Listen and act it out with your face, using a mirror, really. I used a mirror for a long time, but now I don't need to.
Yeah. Do you get inspired and like start working on something, you see something that inspires you, or you kind of are trying to, you have set things in your mind that I want to do a film about this, I want to do a film about that?
The thing that I would tell anybody that makes films, you know, there is a lot of pretty crappy films made, really.
Just for the sake of it.
Yeah, because people have like a pretty terrible idea, but they just want to make something.
Yeah.
But if you're not passionate about it, you're going to spend like 9 months making something that will just drive you crazy. I get an idea, and that idea, if it doesn't disappear within in a few weeks, if it keeps being there, it keeps building and it keeps getting into a better and better idea, and it's a definite thing.
What happens next in your process? Do you start drawing first, or?
I make a 2-page proposal, so it's like 2 sheets of A4. I'll make a mood board first, and the mood board is looking into all things that I can find that feels like that's kind of what it feels like, and that's what it looks a bit like that, but a bit like that, and sometimes colour palettes come into it. And then I make an image, which is me kind of getting all of that together and bringing my idea together more. And then the proposal usually tells you how the film would be made, what the film would be about, how long it will be, who it's aimed at. It tries to explain in 2 pages what that film's going to be. So it's 3 pages with a mood board.
Jemima Mitchell asked, what's the best animation format for beginners?
For complete beginners, I would say cut out under camera animation, which you can do with an iPad, or you can buy like quite cheap small animation packages that have a program and have a camera. There's one called Hue, and it's this camera on a bendy stalk, and you can point it where you want it to go. So and cut out animation is like Charlie and Lola, but you cut out characters out of paper and put a little bit of white tack in the joints so that everything moves. And it's a really nice way to animate. Either that or pixelation, which is animating objects or yourself. Or there's like people do Lego animation on the internet. That's really easy to do, and it's really fun. And once you get the hang of what animation means, which is just moving things a tiny bit and making something do something, then you can animate. Professional animators usually work on 12.5 frames a second, so you take 2 frames at a time.
Right.
Or you set the frame rate to be 12.5 frames per second. But a lot of people, when they start to learn, they put it on like 8 frames a second or 6 frames a second, and that's when animation looks really jerky. And so for animation to look good, you have to just put the time in and do 12.5 frames a second. Don't put it on low frame rates, it looks rubbish.
So Christopher Childs wanted to know, what is the best route into the animation industry without having to go to university?
I think it's completely possible to get into animation without going to university. Just if you can animate, you can get a job as an animator, and if you can show that you've got the skills, you don't need to have done a good degree in any way. So to learn Flash or learn a CG program or begin to learn, and then approach animation companies that you like the animation of and see if they'll give you some work experience.
Do you think that you have to be quite an artistic person to work in animation?
No, I think a lot of people aren't, because there's so many different jobs. You can be really technically good at something, and sometimes those are the most valuable people. So I know a lot of people that use After Effects and this thing called Nuke, and it's really crazy looking programs that don't really make any sense. And it is a creative job, but a lot of it is just understanding something that if I look at it, I just go, what's that?
Yeah.
And it's like really technical.
So from all your experiences, working with big companies, making your own films, now owning your own company, what do you think are, let's say, the 3 key things that you've learnt about kind of filmmaking and the industry, and that you feel kind of informed like your career?
I would say start kind of not at the bottom, but start with animating and freelancing and working for people, and get your skills to be good. Find something you're really passionate about and make films that you are passionate about. Don't get sidetracked in ones that you don't care about enough. It's important.
Yeah.
And just really persevere. Sometimes it's hard, it's not the easiest career sometimes if there's not a lot of work around, or, at the moment I've got my own business, but that's not an easy thing to always be trying to find the next job and the next commission and things. It does take a lot of like personal kind of spirit and drive to do it.
Cool. I think that's all we've got for today, which is great. So thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you to you for watching.